Are you understanding that everything is vibration, including and especially you? And that when you are aware that you are vibration, then you can begin to feel for the harmonics of vibrational harmony. Or you will sense the discord in vibrational disharmonic. In other words, everything is about that, isn't it? Do you understand that your emotions are based on vibration? And that the emotions that you feel are your indicator of what you are doing vibrationally, meaning your emotions are your indicator of that vibrational crack between what has manifested and what you're observing and what you're thinking about it and what you're offering vibrationally and the true vibrational nature of your being. We know there are things that you want, that you believe if you were living, you would feel better in living them rather than living without them. But there is a trap in that thought that goes like this: I'm less happy here than I will be when I'm over there. And since all of your vibrational offering is being offered from here, then if you're less happy here, you can't get there. But how do I feel better over here when I'm not over there? And we say, by looking for things that are over here that also feel good, by caring so much about how you feel that you are willing to work it away, work it around in every which way that you can until you feel the vibrational alignment taking place within you. We have been accused of wanting to teach you how to visualize so profoundly that you're so happy in your vision that whether the manifestation happens now or tomorrow or much, much later, it doesn't really matter because you're happy in your now. We have been accused accurately because we know that there is nothing that you want that is for any other reason than you think you will be better when you get it. You think that you will feel better in the having of that. You would think you will feel better in having more money or in having that lover or in having that more satisfying employment or in having that happier feeling body. We know that it feels to you that those things need to manifest before you will feel happier. But what we're wanting to remind you is that there is this response to what's happening, which is a post-manifestational response to the action world that is around you, but that is only a fraction of your creative license. If you are among the billions of humans who are waiting until something happens, and then you are offering your vibrational response in response to what's happened, then you do not have creative control of your own experience. But if you are someone who has figured out that you are vibration, first and foremost, and if you are someone who has figured out that you can, by choosing thoughts, adjust the vibrational content of your being, and thereby mold the energy of your being into vibrational alignment with that which you have become, now you are a deliberate creator. And so we're encouraging you to be a selective sifter as you pick from the past or as you pick from the present or as you pick from the future. But we're encouraging you to care about how you feel. In fact, we're encouraging you to only care about how you feel. In fact, we're encouraging you to, for the most part, forget about your action journey altogether and let it be a vibrational, emotional journey. Because if you will do that, if you will care more about how you feel about what's happening or about what not's happening than you do about whether it happens or not, now you've got it, you see. When I demanded that I get what I'm looking for first so that I can have an emotional response to what's already happened, now I'm not creating, now I'm just observing, I'm just regurgitating, I'm just responding, I'm just having knee-jerk reactions. Well, how would someone go about creating a condition? By using the condition as I always must to help me conclude what I would prefer, but then immediately taking my eyes off of the not preferred condition while I expectantly reach for an improved condition. I'm healthier in my imagination than I am in my observation, because when I imagine, I can make it just the way I want it to be. Never face reality, create reality. Don't look at what is and regurgitate more of it. Look at what is, automatically launch desires and become the fuller version of that which I am, and then I feel my way into vibrational alignment with what I've become. My work is to become vibrationally worthy of all of the good stuff that I've been asking for. What in the world is vibration? How can somebody be vibrationally worthy? The greatest secret of all. To be vibrationally worthy, you just have to care more than anything else, more than life itself, because it is life itself, how you feel. And then you have to be willing to work your thoughts around in whatever which way you can until you find relief from thoughts that don't feel good. And while you gradually replace them systematically with thoughts that feel increasingly better.
now is that there's going to be a return on this planetary system of people that have a higher level of knowledge, and they're coming to save Earth. And this is what's being passed around, and it's starting to become viral as the world is becoming a lot more sensitive to hearing things like that, versus in its old days it would just reject something like that altogether as buffoonery. But as we get more to a level of wanting something to happen and wanting something better to happen for this earth, a lot of people have become a lot more inquisitive about whether we could be visited by extraterrestrials. What this leads into is we need to explain now to humanity that the extraterrestrials have always been here, and that the faction itself that's representing itself as the ones to be channeling the beings that are on their way have been none other than the faction that has continuously been holding back the information that aliens have already been here. What this is really about is we'll get into just a brief history of extraterrestrials. You see already that the entrance of the Elohim inside of our galaxy, which are said to be connected with the planetary system of Orion, have already seeded Earth as a planet or a plant. This comes in the form of fertility gods. This is how it's stated in mythology, because they look at gods of fertility as being the birth of life, this is like the phallicism that exists within mythology. Now, if you notice men, if you go into Google and you type in men or M-E-N, Egyptian deity, you'll see that this deity has its phallus erect and ready to see. So this is what you're really looking at when we call a splashdown, which is when other beings are coming, they call them star seeds, from other planets and literally land into these planets. And now this is how it starts to take place, because it all takes place in the mind. When you come from space, you don't have a body, because the body can only go 70,000, 80,000 feet high before it begins to freeze, or it can't breathe. So it's obviously that the physical body itself is confined to the earth. So as long as you have the physical body and you're using that to actually travel outside Earth, the most you can do is go on a ship, a physical ship. But what the human body is also equipped with is a spiritual body, which has the ability to navigate the stars. So what we're literally dealing with here is that inside of us, we have this ability to star travel to places, and we sometimes do that in our dreams. Some people do this more naturally. Some people have taken a little bit more time doing it, and some people can't do it at all, and they're just learning how. So where we're really at is we understand that our ability is to actually jump into other realities. And the only way that you can see that really happening is to start understanding that everything starts to happen first in a person's mind. And so a person can be invaded within their mind, and that's anytime you learn Saturnalian knowledge, which I call the saints, or the Satans, or the Satires on Saturday. Anytime you learn that knowledge, you become that. You become from Saturn. If you learn Venusian knowledge, from Venusian initiations to the son of Venus, which is Amor, to all the different knowledge that comes from that, the Luciferian concept, then you become from Venus. So that's really what you're dealing with when we're talking about there's not just the system of knowledge that comes from these planets, but also their essences, because every time a rock or a stone or a frequency or a sound or even a word comes from outer space and somehow gets uttered, brought here, or whatever, because it all starts to happen on a fractal, then we have the ability to become affected by that. And so Earth as a planetary system has been affected heavily by a lot of different life, and now it is what it is. You have different people that are mixed with various star systems. So what we're looking for now is we're looking for something universal. So anyone that has a story that's based on their idea and their particular race and how they want to see things from their particular planetary system, then that's going to be a problem because it's not universal. So we're going to highlight a couple of these things now happening within what we're dealing with now with what I'm calling the inception. And I believe here I can actually switch this from video to the screen, which is awesome. So let's take a moment here to get a thumb drive to make that happen, since I've now seen that we can do that. And let's get some of these pictures up from what exactly we have here, because what we're also doing is we are still, for those that are just coming in the show, we're broadcasting that positive healing DNA activation frequency over the internet with the equipment that you see in the background, but we're going to get you a better shot of that. And I've taken the dish, I've got the RF receiver, I've got the GB4000 and the amplifier fully cranked up, and what we're doing is we're just broadcasting over this city this DNA change. And I'm going to get a little bit deeper into the programming as far as getting people onto the level of being in the know, because we're the aliens that are here. That's what we're starting to figure out, is that those who go deeper figure out, oh, we're from the stars, so that makes you an alien. But the thing is that if you're being incepted, if you're being told what kind of alien you are, and someone is forcing that information on you, and you adapt that information that's not universal, it's going to be detrimental. Because the things that we want to introduce are things like universal languages, like the cymatics, things that are going to bring us into a higher level, getting a thumb drive, bring us in a higher level as a unit, because we have to be able to get the person who speaks another language that's not ours into the know. And so if everyone would just hold on for just a brief moment, I'm going to get this hard drive onto the screen, and we're going to get some of these photos so that I can have a little bit more support here on what exactly is taking place on the dimension. The alien invasion is happening now. It's very interesting to be living through it. I can definitely say this must be some type of benchmark for humanity, because if we're just realizing it, that's actually a benchmark for us. And so what I want to make everyone clear on today, after we're done with this particular program, I just want everyone to be clear about the invasion that is happening, and how it's happening, and how it is going to continue to spread if we don't stop it, and what it's spreading will equal. And I think I'll actually be able to do this in a phenomenal way, because you'll be able to get a little bit of this feed. But let's just see how this works. Okay, let's see if we can get this blown up a little bit more. And then we're going to go on a tour with 7. And this is not even in order, but I can show you how, with every single picture here, I can explain to you exactly what's happening on the planetary system with the new alien invasion that they're saying is happening. But there's a reason for this, and this is about neo-Nazism, honestly. It's something that is the V for Vendetta. What the vendetta really is how the Nazis lost the war. And the thing is that some have to ask whether or not they really lost, for the simple fact that it could have been a deeper opt to lose anyway, meaning that there was more that was supposed to be at stake if they wanted a deeper part of the goal, meaning to get control of the children, to get control of a lot more things. Then you would false flag, you would make like you lost, and then embed deeper why everyone thought you were gone. The interesting part about it, if you understand how many people were in Germany and how many people were with the Nazi Party, you understand that all those people aren't dead, and many of those people have not changed their way of thinking. That's guaranteed. They're carrying on a plan because many are swarmed by the vendetta. So this picture here is of Dietrich Eckart, who is the individual that influenced Hitler from the what we like to call the handler level, Hitler's handler, because there was an occult nature to everything they were doing with the Third Reich. However, they needed certain people to do certain things, and there was an issue with who was going to carry all this esoteric knowledge and become the leader. Because you got to realize, if you carry a large level of esoteric knowledge, it's only going to be a matter of time before you start to realize exactly where you stand in the whole thing. And so the fact of Masonry and many of the different societies is that they compartmentalize information. They only give a person a small amount so that the person doesn't have the whole story, so they start acting on the small amount before they get the story, and they're told to do this in trust. So the next picture here is of the actual Masonic tracing board, which is when joining Masonry, one eventually learns how to trace this out from the mind, but they start off by doing this freehand. And in all this, there is the actual symbols of Masonry. But you see the cross being the first, well, you see the G, which is the compass in the square, right there on the podium, and there's a ladder. And then there's a 7-pointed star that's right on the top. And I want everyone to remember this particular part of the tracing board, because this is what's going to explain a lot about what's going on with the fates and the system of Pleiades. So what you're literally dealing with here is you're dealing with first the G, which stands for geometry and gravity. It's the ability when there's no gravity, one is not held to the earth. So the next step they show up the ladder is Christianity and one understanding that. And then the next step they show up the ladder is an anchor, simplifying the gods of the sea, the fishes of men, Poseidon, Neptune, etc., the Dagon, the fish gods. The next thing is the chalice, which is the crest for the grail, overcoming the dragon or the actual Leviathan. And then the next thing is your fate, which is the seventh sister, the star, the Pleiades, the seven-pointed star. So that's the tracing board. As we go on, we see Dietrich Eckart and Hitler here in a photo together. They definitely were always with each other. And from that, there was the National Socialist German Workers' Party that was formed. This became the Neo-Nazi Party and many things under this same umbrella. In addition to that, Ultima Thule was formed, which you're also seeing the actual logo of here. And these societies were formed to be two different parts. And I will go a little slow on this video, these pictures, just in case it's taking a time to ship. And also, we'll actually have to program another frequency here in a moment, which will be RNA. So if everyone will hold on for just a moment, we'll do that. Okay, we got 637 hertz, that's RNA. We got to get both of those channels going on. Maybe a lot of people talk about DNA, but they never talk about RNA. It's like a one-way freeway. If you only got DNA, you need your RNA together. So we got the RNA going, and here we are. So Ultima Thule, of course, forms under the Neo-Nazi Party. You've seen all these symbols before, especially in modern times now. Thule is formed. So the branch of Thule was really responsible for collecting what was necessary for these group of beings to find out how they can get not only into this dimension, but into multiple dimensions and beyond. Understanding they did not have this knowledge. And what's interesting is that when channeling in certain levels of the Enochian, as the individuals that have come forth and said that they're involved in that, which is a very complex language, and Illuminati being involved, John Dee, etc. When getting, and then also the Stargate itself having Enochian sigils on it, just to give you the clue of what goes on with the language. So what they said was that when they finally got this thing to work, and this is not in Stargate, this is in the actual annals of what went on with Nazi Germany and the Gizens, etc. When they got the gate open, the first thing they said is that the beings were very disappointed about having their space invaded. The game Space Invaders. And what generally what they say happened after that is that the level of communication that happened after that was basically only perceived by well, they say maybe one or two individuals that were actually a part of that experiment, and the rest of them died. So the information that ultimately was finally transcribed, which they say finally came to them through AWAS, which is a being that we'll see later on in this, was that in order for their particular race, because this race that we're talking about are very related to what we would call fallen angels, they, in channeling Enochian, which is talked about in the Enochian text, that the fallen angels need Enoch to write a repentance for them. Repent meaning gaining back your feathers or gaining back the power of the pentagram. They needed to get this power back so that they could get back from their fallen state, because they were somehow trapped in a lower frequency, and the beings that did this to them were supposedly magi and magicians and high-level Atlanteans, etc., that were working for the faction that they rebelled against. So in this communication, what was conveyed is that they were going to need to get in touch with certain levels of power and energy, like certain artifacts. So Ultima Thule set out to gather these types of artifacts, which were the Ark of the Covenant, the Spear of Longinus, and scrolls from the Vimanas, which were the Tibetan scrolls. And there was importance for this. Ark, as a term, is basically a holder of information, a ship, a boat. And if you understand what Noah's Ark was about, it said go into Noah's Ark 2 by 2, meaning that get these beings together 2 by 2 so we can make them and create an ark. But what you're really looking at is a storehouse for DNA. Instructions for God-like sciences are kept in arks. Maybe even entire planets kept inside of arks. Planets being as small as marbles compared to some of the things that actually exist out there when you see Earth compared to Betelgeuse and Antares. So collecting the ark was important because they needed a particular ark, which obviously was the power of how to control and create realities with words, which was in the hands of the tribes called the Hebrews, which later on stemmed all the way back into Naga, people that were Hindus, people in the Asiatic culture, which was the seed of civilization. So What we also watched is that there was a resonance that happens with all metals, especially gold, in the spear of Longinus because of being worshipped for piercing the side of Christ, which was actually a victory over Jupiter. This particular spear was always idolized as being what was going to be necessary to overthrow what was controlling this planetary system. And many people prayed to it, so it carried the belief and the power of all of those people. So it was a agenda to collect that. In the Vimanas, because there was another set of the Tibetans that were always called dark Tibetans, or the ones that actually practiced the darker forms of the Tibet or Dogen, had these particular, this level of knowledge of space travel and traveling in flying craft. As we see here that the indigenous of the Asians of these areas were already familiar with craft, and this is actually an excerpt from the Vimanas, of this ability to have these ships. And so immediately after pursuing all of this knowledge, first from a mythical level, then the Thule party starts getting involved in the more of the scientific and how to make it all work, how to cross into these dimensions by using frequency lasers. But we got to tap into the esoteric knowledge first because it's all been hidden there. So the story is that Hitler put an army of Übermensch together to march them into the Himalayas, which never had been really traveled, where you had sanctions of monks that were basically continuing to live all their life just to protect these scrolls, because they always have to remain here on Earth for them to keep the frequency, the power, etc. The words are even written powerful in this language. So notice also that if they understand how to interpret Vimana, then they also understand how to use that language to create, which was what the Persians were deeply into. People still need to realize also that still while these people are running around figuring all this stuff out, there's already a grander being that's just watching them. Because that's exactly how this stuff got created. So we see after Nazi Germany gets a hold of much of the information from the Vimanas, they start to construct spacecraft. And then Madame Blavatsky begins to play the role of how this whole agenda is going to end up becoming more or less the new religion and the new way that everyone is to believe, or what we call a new world order. But the unfortunate part about this particular new world was it was not universal. It was partial to what they call the original, or the new, actually, root race, which was a superior being in their eyes. And they got many involved with this agenda. The interesting part about it is the people that were involved in on the agenda killed something to the tune of 120 million people in a short period of time. Mussolini, General Mao, and Hitler. And many of those people were actually the ones that pushed the agenda, of course. So what we've seen only from these individuals who are cloaking themselves under many different names, Great White Brotherhood, they're hiding behind many different things that now we're even unclear if they're completely associated with them. Meaning that when they use the swastika itself, does that mean that the swastika did not exist before the Thule party came together? Of course not. The swastika in itself was a symbol of wisdom and was a symbol of perpetual energy. But as the mind state of the population controls the meaning of the symbol's meaning itself begins to change. So there becomes a want to take all the most powerful symbols and make it one's own. That's what the party was really about, is taking the most powerful symbols and saying, we're going to use this to create our own society. So what we're looking at now is that as we continue to scroll through here, we see that the alien invasion seemed to take place more or less through time travel. Understanding now, as Dan Winter is opening up more about different things in relation to Sirian technology, that when you're dealing with a planetary system such as Earth and how easy it is to program our wavelength, when you're in linear time, meaning that when you actually have a time clock, if there's beings that are outside of that, especially sidereal beings, they can dip into time instantly and maybe alter things that were supposed to take place in the future, etc. But this is still not just as easy just not as easy just said. It has to be also done. So according to the records, a project took place in order to open up a rift in space-time between what was to be 1940 and 1980, because they sensed this faction that was interested in altering what was ultimately going to happen in the future. They sensed that this would be the most prime time to make that altercation, because obviously things like what would seem to be hippie movements, actual times where people are coming together on this love concept that seems that because of that many people overpower even the meaning of the word itself and go into more of what the idea of what everyone thinks it means. It does take a lot of power to overpower a word, or to completely take power of a word. Understanding, to take power of the word love would be to take power over the planet Jupiter, because Jupiter is also called Jove, a J being an L. So what's interesting is that what we find is that when you go into the indigenous world with a spacecraft of some sort that can bend space-time even for a moment and appear to them and give them directions, they can be manipulated by that. And that's why when we look deeper into the Mayan teachings of the arrival of Kukulkan, which is now became more or less a Saturnalian figure, but before then being an individual that was charcoal. So the interesting part is that what we find is an altering of history. And the reason why that has to be prevented is because then no one's going to have their real origins. I think that personally Dan Winter is the best resource for all those who find themselves of Anglo descent to understand exactly where their lineage comes from. And then in addition to that, reading books such as Anacalypse, which I'll post onto the site with the audio composition of what the original gods really looked like and where certain gods were from. Because it's a fact that many of the beings that came later on, that were not here in the beginning, went to war with the beings that were already here. Meaning that every time you see a skirmish take place on Earth, if you saw Egypt being overthrown by Rome, everyone already knew the Romans were from Mars and were already having trouble on their planet, and a faction of them needed to expand also here on Earth. Some have come with the god and all of a sudden overthrew the previous god that was in power. This happens because these beings are real. And to understand that or understand that is to get a bigger idea of what you're exactly into and what you're involved with and what's being conveyed to you at this point, because there's a reason why you're being put in the know. And so what you have here is you have a circle of individuals who began to bring forth individuals that they would just like to call Nords or Nordics, which connected very heavy back into the Druid connection of spirituality in the tree of Yggdrasil and the fairy and the elven gods. In addition to that, you also had information that was not exactly a part of these factions at all, especially when it came from Tibet and Asia, that they incorporated into their writings in order to give them more clout and ability to erase the story of what they were doing in Orion. Because these beings were originally fleeing from their source. And the most interesting part is, and this is what we're going to highlight in this new recording that we're putting together, but if you notice here on this chart, you see on the bottom right-hand corner Semyaz, as they have here as blonde and blue-haired woman. And she's a heavenly angel. But the interesting part is Semyaz actually is the fallen angel that's found in the book of Enoch as being the one that binded the other fallen angels to an oath that they would have this whole thing with women, which was having offspring by women. So there's no way Semyaz could even be a woman. But this is the direct, what I would like to now know as plagiarization to other people's histories and stories that's going to just cause everyone to get confused. Because the reality of our planetary system is that there's more people here that need to hear their story, or they're going to blow up inside of the planet, because they need to know. They need to know where they're from, they need to know what they correspond to, and when they're told information about that, if it does not resonate with them, because they've already gained that ability to have something resonate with them, then they become even more furious about not getting the correct information. So of course, as we see in the history of mankind and woman, that there's whole beings that have been visiting in these saucer-shaped craft and already been living here and driving around these saucer-shaped craft, which is still better than the Bentley. So the thing is that this type of craft, as we see here in this, the beam ships used by the Palladian races were the exact same beam ships that were already identified with the ones being used by Vril. And that's what we were highlighting in this new video that we're putting out now from the lady who's raised a red flag about there being an alien invasion from what appears to be none of the beings that she's affiliated with also, but she doesn't see that she's been accepted. Here's how the invasion is going to take place and is already taking place. These beings do not have physical bodies because they come from dimensions that are non-physical. When they come into our planetary system, they need to have a body. So if a person starts to practice with their knowledge and their belief system, then at a certain point, especially as for according to the star lineups and things of that nature, they can be incepted or possessed by those beings. Then those beings work half and half with the person. Sometimes it's really more like 90-10, more in the being's favor, to get things done that's in the being's agenda. Now what it appears is that probably many of the dismembered souls that have been wandering from the last time we ran across the field with the Nazis are back for another round in other bodies that are non-physical. And many of the individuals that are coming under the persuasion of these parties, such as the Theosophical Society, such as the UN and their one world order, with different beings such as Maitreya, not passing out the information that's already been here. And many people will say, well, geez, that means that you're saying that these individuals that are coming to help us are not coming to help us, and we believe they're coming to help us. I'll explain this to you. There's been multiple times that we've been introduced to technology here on our planetary system that our own citizens have created. This is coming from free energy. This is coming from multiple levels where beings on this planet have discovered things like cymatics, universal languages, how to send love in the water, all these different things, and all the government has done here is continuously shut that down. So we wouldn't really need the help of any extraterrestrial race to give us that knowledge because we already have it. The interesting part is that if these beings could do anything about what was actually going on here, if they weren't exactly the problem themselves, meaning coming to get more of our resources, coming to try to share our bodies with us, then the fact of the matter is that they would have already gotten Jupiter off of our back. Because that's what's holding this planet together, and everyone that's adept knows that. So, what we have to figure out, and what we're tasked with figuring out, is what exact phase are we in all of this? So what we see is that now that the UN has come forth, understand that the United Nations and the United States are still two separate factions, and the United Nations should not be looked at as the United States. The United Nations is a jump off of the United States, using the United States to jump off into their total idea of every country coming together and being under one society. And that religion of that society is Theosophy. So, or Theosophical. So what we have here is Madame Blavatsky and the rest of the individuals that were in cahoots with her, bringing this level of knowledge into the New World Order and the movements that we're seeing in the world today, and how they believe. So we also see our space program. This is Jack Parsons here, the leader of JPL, the one who actually designed and did have the Babylonian child and actually designed some of the first rockets that we shot into other planets, or even into other, not only other places here on Earth, but also into other planets. So understanding exactly where this really comes from, this knowledge of jet propulsion has been what's fueled us making missiles, rockets, bombs to destroy things. And so it's not just been used for the ability to space travel. In fact, interspace travel and astral travel is how they do that. Space travel is a whole different thing. It's done on a different nature from not just taking an actual physical ship out into the galaxy and traveling it around like a car, but more blinking it, like they did with the actual submarine, where the submarine disappeared and then reappeared somewhere else. So understand, jumping is more what you're talking about with space travel, not leaving the dock like a regular ship and just traveling until you get there. It's more like traveling a different type of way. So as we see that our government under NASA, which is none other than the acronym NASA, or NAS is the rights of the Nazarite, or the NASA, or the Nazi, was something that they were individuals that were already carrying information about what was going on here on this planetary system. Whether those individuals were positive or negative, I would only say at this now is they probably were both, meaning that they had an agenda in mind. There was other individuals that were part of one of their factions, other part of another. Some of them didn't agree, as we see with the Operation Valkyrie, which was the idea of actually dethroning Hitler, and other Nazis having to move into the United States because they didn't like the way Hitler was doing things. There's of course the notion that they say Madame Blavatsky did not approve of all of what was going on in the Theosophical Society at this point right now, and it's only because it fell into more of the darker hands of the individuals that were controlling it behind her, which she didn't even know, because she was oftentimes alone on her missions pursuing this information they sent her out to get. That's still something Blavatsky would have to come back and let us know. In addition to that, you're seeing here a picture of the 7 stars of Pleiades. It's to my understanding that these fates are all different. So it doesn't mean that all this whole Pleiadian star system is evil. It just means that there is a faction within this Pleiadian star system that has been affecting our Earth and introducing concepts that are not pro-human. Apparently they say that it may be coming from the Hathor faction. As we continue, we find that these Pleiadians, the ones that are from the particular faction that have been negative, are coming in the form of the individual that you see here on the screen, the same individual that you've seen from Hellboy, the vampiric type look. They appear majority to women, not men, even those men that were reading the same books as women. So that's what we're dealing with here on Earth is that the alien showdown is about to take place. Because as these beings come back and start finding willing hosts, they are inside of individuals, and these individuals are on the internet. It's interesting because you would think that the aliens would be using some other technology, but the internet is their technology. And so what you find now is you'll find that individuals, there will be other blogs about things, there will be information that will be somehow steering into one way or another. But this will come from individuals that seem to have no business on the internet themselves, no computer savvy. As I was highlighting in this particular video that we were watching of this particular lady, she said that she had really no experience in dealing with computers or physics, and all of a sudden she gained the ability to do and learn physics and have the ability to use the computer from this being coming inside of her body. However, that this being was completely about its own agenda is something that we have to see, not from inside of the lady now, because she's only having the experience and she's very delighted about the experience. And so that's the gist of what's really supposed to be talked about today, is exactly how this inception is taking place. That it is a time where now the red flags have been raised. We're actually completing a video right as we speak to get this information to everyone about it, how it exactly is taking place. We're watching an actual alien invasion first taking place in the mind, which is men, or the mental, and then invading into the mind, getting the person to think all of these different things that are mainly related to one particular planetary system, but not universal. Many of those actual ideas are pro-Nazi, meaning that the idea of the actual caste system, superior beings, and things of this nature are heavily emphasized. Many of us started in our knowledge as lower beings and are completely making the procession to the higher beings. That's what we're recording here in real time, meaning that what the resistance is about is the transformation just being documented so that other people have somewhat of a guideline with adding their own sauce, their own flavor, their own frequency to it, of what exactly is taking place here on the planetary system, so they can be in the know, so they can become more fulfilled with what's taking place here in this world and get more involved, rather than being remote viewers or observers that are not willing to get involved in the reality in which they created. So what we have here is we have completely a dossier which is being put together of the actual invasion on the planetary system. Again, it's first taking place in people that are of somewhat of the New Age persuasion, that accepted the Archangel Michael coming across the grid, and the different sacred geometries and the stars of David, and all these different things that they've now collected and then put into their minds. And then what that's allowed them to be is open to a faction that at this point, rather than terming it good or evil, we'll just say it has an agenda. We need to understand to this level whether that agenda totally benefits humanity. And if we are citizens of the universe and citizens of humanity, then this will be something that we will want to get involved in so that we make sure it doesn't go the wrong way. Factions like the United Nations are factions that exist within themselves making decisions, those decisions aren't in front of everyone at this point, even though they have all the power. They have few representatives that are really coming out to explain to us exactly what are the decisions being made. But the fact of the matter is that the UN has shown from the beginning that it's none other than an offshoot of the Theosophical Society, which was very active in the neo-Nazi party. And that the scheduled alien invasion that's due here on Earth is first to take place in ships from the body, in the physical level, and then from the body, from the spiritual level, and then from the actual physical level, if this planetary system begins to accept that as their reality. And now in this recording with this, what's really going on here on our Earth, because this is taking place in our minds, is that Earth is our body. It's obvious as you look at it on the fractal. First, the idea comes. There's other beings that are coming from other planetary systems. This is what they look like. They're here to do this, X, Y, Z. We take that idea into our minds. Then, as more people begin to think about it, it sets a time clock on it on when it's going to happen. The more people think about it, speeds up the time in which it's actually going to happen. That's how consciousness is guided in this reality. So, the main thing for people to do now is hold on to exactly what you already know to be true, which is yourself. You have a direct connection with the universal energy. You are it. So if something tries to invade what you know to be going on, what you know to be the truth, which is what the resistance is about, is bringing the information of exact knowledge of what really is going on here, hold ground, because that's going to allow you to have the ability in a moment to create your reality as you want it. Because what all of these factions know is that humanity itself is going into a time in which it's going to be able to manifest. What they want to do is steer humanity's manifestation. Humanity's manifestation is guaranteed because humanity has something that's even a part of its pineal gland that lets it know when it needs to activate, so that it can jump time again, so it can get out of cycles that are going down black holes. So the thing is that what we're really dealing with now is that when that activates, we have to be very leery of going into another person's mind other than our own. Getting deeper into the parts of the occult nature that don't lead down paths that are ever going to come to a conclusion, because it's infinite down there. It's unbegotten.